Before the National Defense Education Act, the country in terms of education was doing business as usual. Students were going to school and learning the basic core subjects that every student learns. After World War II, schools were pushing for teaching students basic life skills for those not planning on going to college or any other type of schooling after high school, but was criticized for not being up to par with what students need to know. The members of the National Science Foundation were criticizing schools and teachers for the low scores on math, science, and foreign language tests. This criticism only increased with Russia's launching of Sputnik in October of 1958. Sputnik was the world's first artificial satellite, and the United States government grew concerned of the race to get to space. The United States saw this also as a national defense issue because the fear grew that Russia was using this satellite to spy on the United States. The government was showing a growing concern for increased education in math, science, and foreign languages in schools, and the conflict was shown in the demands of the federal government's view of education and the power of the states and their choice in curriculum. Because of this rising conflict, the National Defense Education Act was signed into law on September 2, 1958. This act was put forth by U.S. federal legislation, was passed by Congress, and signed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. The purpose or goal of the act was to improve America's school system and to encourage higher education for students. This was the first time the federal government became deeply involved in education. They did so in order to meet demands that national security was addressing. The main points or features of the NDEA were scholarships and loans to promote higher education and grants to state for math, science, and modern foreign languages. This act also helped graduate students find fellowships, aid research, and supported experimentation in media for education purposes. In addition, it helped improve the statistical services at the state level. People supporting the NDEA use two examples in relation to the NDEA. The first example is the Morrill Act of 1862. This act granted land to states so they could sell the land and raise money to establish higher education schools. The second example was the Smith-Hughes Act of 1917. This act funded vocational agricultural education programs. While both of these acts were federally promoted, advocates for the NDEA decided that states and communities would still be responsible for American schooling and higher education. The opponents of the NDEA decided that the act would put the federal government in charge of education instead of the states and communities. Two organizations, the National Education Association and the Council of Chief State Officers, decided there was too much focus on only science and technology, and they also disagreed with how much support the National Science Foundation was providing instead of the Department of Education. The NDEA has not only aided in the areas of mathematics, science, and foreign languages, but also in areas like technical education, area studies, geography, English as a second language, counseling and guidance, school libraries, and educational media centers. The Act is able to do this because it provides institutions of higher education with 90% of capital funds for low-interest loans of students. The Act also gives federal support for improvement and change in elementary and secondary education. Also contains statutory prohibitions of federal direction, supervision, or control over the curriculum, program of instruction, administration, or personnel of any educational institution. The Act has also opened the doorway for more federal involvement in education. Now, students who want to further their education can get loans and grants from FAFSA, which is from the federal government. This helps the low-income students have a good chance as anyone to change the world. This act not only changed the education world but also the world of students, because without FAFSA and the money the government gives out, most students would not be able to go to college. Without students in college, we wouldn't have the doctors or teachers or any other person to help make the world a better place. This act did just that.